Yeah, gotta cue the walk-on music. The 50 Cent, yeah.
Kill it.
I got that.
My bad,
Yeah.
my bad.
All right, hello everyone. Thank you for everybody for coming out. My name is Austin Lupercio. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm a co-founder of a real estate development company called America First Developments. We're a company actually founded in January of 2024. The main premise of our company is to bring real value, real experience to the consumer base that majority don't get today. But today, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story. We can get into the development side of things, at the Q&A part, but I want to give you guys some more detail about how I got here with the goal and intent of giving you guys some value. I want you guys to be able to take away some of the things that I've gone through and move forward in your life and ideally inspire somebody here to move forward with what they want to do in life. This is a part of our vision board. The presentation is called the Come Up, but this will eventually be part of our warehouse. So this is one of the first few properties that we built. Here's our logo in the center here. We went from building smaller houses like this. I consider it like a Home Depot shed is what I consider it. It's an 884 square foot house. This was at the beginning. This was the first year we started building. We actually built this and sold it in November of 2024. It was on a slab foundation. You can see on the left, framing, the finished product, and this was the finished product in the kitchen. So we went from building properties like this to building higher-end luxury real estate. And this was just a matter of 1 year difference. And by the way, I come from, which I'll get into the story, but I come from sleeping on couches. I come from sharing a bed with my dad. So like I said, my whole intent here is to give you the story of my background with the goal of inspiring somebody to realize you can do anything that you want. And obviously, we're just getting started. But these are a few of the products that we've built. This is actually in South Knoxville, a street called Viewcrest. These are some of the views that we have. Very, very pretty product. Very, very pretty view. I would love to keep it myself. Realistically, what we're doing too is we're building, $1.6 million, $1.2 million house, and we're selling it for $750, $800, which is a good thing for us because we're really learning the skill set of how to build high-end luxury products. And we can take it to any market that we want, a market that actually has more spread, a market that actually has more leverage that we can create through profit. But it's a great learning ground. And crazy part about this too, one of the things, our core values and the vision that we have in general with America First Developments is innovation. If you were to go here, I don't know if anybody, I know Charles knows, he had a lot just literally on the same street, but there's no houses like this. I mean, houses nearby are selling for $250. Now, some can argue and some will say, why would you do that? For us, what we care about is true innovation, and we're willing to take the risk ourselves within our company to bring a real product, a new product, something that inspires the actual end consumer, to do something different and live a different way. And also, this is just a general reflection of our entire company. Our premise of what we do is to make a real impact nationwide, and we're just starting here in Knoxville, Tennessee. Here are some of our other products. These are on Island Home, so just down the street from Viewcrest. These are two houses right next to each other. The quick details behind it is we had one lot, we split into two, and we built these properties. These are 2,300 square foot houses. Very, very, very pretty. Very, very, very unique, which is intentionally designed that way. And here's some more details on it. This is what the inside looks like. We've gone through immense trial and tribulations just simply within these builds in itself. But very, very pretty products. I would love to live in this house. Every time I go there, I'm like, I wish I could keep it. But you don't get high on your own supply, which is a lesson I learned when I was selling candy in 6th grade. But yeah, so this is the master bathroom. This is the kitchen area. I mean, these pictures don't even do it justice. You guys almost have to either go in person and check it out or see the Zillow listing. Richard?
2 grown men fit in that shower?
I think so. I heard some guys tried it out the other day. I didn't ask any questions because I was a little sussed out, but yeah, I think so. But yeah, very, very, very pretty design. Our main intention behind our design, just like everything else within the company, is to bring things to the marketplace that nobody else has seen or experienced. Our premise behind what we do and what we build is we build as if we're building for our grandma. That's what we always say. One of our standards is excellency is our standard. We have a shirt that says excellency is our obligation, and we mean that. You can tear down any of our walls, and just as you see on the outside how pretty it is, it'll be just as pretty on the inside. And anybody of the contractors who don't achieve that result don't work with us. So once again, here's the thing too, and I'm getting off track here, but one of the challenges that we face within America First Developments is it's very difficult to tell the difference between a product like this outside of design and the Blow Joe who builds with Home Depot materials. Because the average consumer doesn't even necessarily know the difference. The outside looks the same. You know, the analogy I use is when you have a truck made in China that's a piece of crap, and you have a truck made in America that's nicer, but they look exactly the same, the Chinese truck breaks down on you in 5,000 miles, but the American one goes 200,000 miles. Now they both probably break down at 5,000. But nonetheless, they look the same, but the actual guts of it are much different. So that's going to be one of the challenging things that we're in the process of actually resolving. As the company scales, it's going to give us more marketing leverage to be able to solve issues like that. And there's a lot of lessons behind that too that we can get into later down the road, but this is one of our most recent products. So I wanted to kind of give you guys a background about where I started at. I've actually been an entrepreneur since I was very young. I remember being in 5th grade, so I was 9 years old, 10 years old. I learned how to bake cookies from scratch. Chocolate chip cookies are still my favorite dessert. I can recite to you right now the entire recipe if you want. Anybody, just let me know. But yeah, I bagged those up. I would sell them I'd put them in my backpack. I would sell them at school, made money that way. Middle school, I was selling candy. I had a backpack full of candy. So I've been an entrepreneur for quite some time. Junior year, I did an entrepreneurship internship. So finally, when I turned 18 and I actually graduated high school, was finally my opportunity to do something myself. I went to this is a community college out in San Diego. That's where I'm originally from, born and raised in San Diego, California. And I actually was supposed to go to University of Arizona. And I was going to go for business management, or business and entrepreneurship was going to be my majors. But my financial aid fell through last second. And crazy enough, even if I did have financial aid, my tuition would have been like $100,000 per year, which I'm very glad and very happy I didn't end up going. But either way, I would have figured it out nonetheless. But yeah, this is the school that I went to. I went to this school for one semester, didn't even finish one semester. I absolutely hated it. I had a art history class, I had a music history class, and then I had 2 American history classes. And it was the most brutal thing, because at the end of the day, the reason why I was going to college was to actually learn about entrepreneurship and how to be successful in business. Since I was a kid, I've always known that I wanted to be a big businessman and build a really big company. And it wasn't teaching me that. I was learning about, Egypt, what their, most recent finding of Egypt's painting. I don't know, something random. This has no correlation with entrepreneurship and business. I ended up dropping out. I actually had a history page that I stayed up all night writing, procrastinated to the last second. Wrote like a six-page history essay, and then when I turned it in, the guy had ended up telling me that he's going to give me a 1 whole grade below because I didn't put my name on the actual paper, which is insane. And it was worth like 50% of my grade for the semester. So I said, screw this, and I dropped out. And I actually dropped out, and I started working at McDonald's for about a weekend. Yeah, just one weekend. And it was kind of funny because, I had to figure out a way to make money. But I ended up applying at this McDonald's just on East Lake Parkway in Chula Vista. And, the manager ends up, hiring me, whatever. He's training me for 1 week, and I'm like sitting in the back next to the fryers going through this SOP of how to be a McDonald's guy. And he ends up calling me that weekend, and he's like, hey, I want to just introduce you, congratulate you that you're now just got hired to the team. We want to start training you on Monday. And the guy didn't even realize that I was the dude he was just training like 2 seconds ago. So I used that as, I hated it. I was frying chicken nuggets. I wasn't doing fries yet, I don't think, but I was doing McChickens, spicy McChickens, and chicken nuggets. That's what I was doing. And once again, just realized that wasn't for me. I had a friend at the time, his name was Juan Aguirre, and Juan, he was going to college too, Southwestern College, and I said, hey dude, what if we actually just started a business? We're both in the cars, what if we actually, rather than doing this BS and learning about random stuff that has no correlation with where we're going in the future, why don't we actually start a business together? This is in 2017, so I graduated high school in 2018. This is a screenshot, the only kind of notifications I'd get, right? No text, no nothing, but I get these, which is I had 3 pennies in my account. That's all I had. And this is how the basis of my first business was. So I started this business called Color Soto Details. Color Soto Details was an automotive mobile detailing business. And I started this with a couple of friends. This is my friend Slade. He was like the second partner of the business. This is me and my brother, my older brother. He's 6 years older, so I'm 19, he's 25. And this was a really big accomplishment for me because, like I said, I have 3 pennies in my account. I was also flipping iPhones at the same time of doing this. But this was where, during the same period of time, this was the actual house that I lived in. So this is a studio. My parents had just divorced, and I was sharing a studio with my mom and 4 other dogs. And I was rotating from that to my friend Slade's couch, this is Slade, really good guy. But I would rotate from his couch. In the living room, I'd be sleeping. Everybody's walking in outside the front door, and I'm just, the light shining on my eyes every time the door opens up. And so yeah, that was some of the stuff that I went through. Also during this time in rotation, I actually was sleeping here at this townhome. So my brother was renting this room here. So he was just renting the room. I was sleeping on the couch in the living room. So my brother he's not even renting the place, right? I'm literally sleeping in the couch of the place that he's renting, but he's renting the room. And during this entire time, I'm running Colors Auto Details. So I come from dropping out of college, working at McDonald's for 2 seconds, literally having no money, and creating a business at 18 with no prior business. I don't have, family in business. I don't have a silver spoon. I don't have anybody to coach me. This is me literally just figuring it out on my own. When I had this top right, this picture of this Tesla, this was like one of my proudest moments because this was all just an idea to me at one point. And here I'm like detailing this magnificent Tesla. At the time, I thought it was like a Lamborghini, but it was a really big deal to me. Now, what ended up happening was I lost this. So I was running Colors Auto Details and building that up for about a year and a half, and I actually lost the business overnight. I had just invested the money that I had got, from working and bought new equipment, and come to find out, I had the clientele for the day. I walk out to my van. The van wasn't in the location where I parked it at. And I'm like, maybe I forgot where I parked it. Maybe I parked it somewhere else. I went and looked around. I started running back and forth. And I was like, maybe it got towed. Because, by the way, this was in 2018. The van had 2012 tags. No insurance, no registration. I was thugging it out, going all across San Diego. Filling up, I had a big old water tank. I had all kinds of equipment, generators, buffers, detailing equipment. This was stacked. This was fully stacked. My thought process was, you got to do what you got to do at the end of the day. I have 3 pennies in my account. What am I going to go legit, register this vehicle, pay $5,000 in California, deal with all the regulation? My thought process was, I'm going to figure it out. It'll work out. But unfortunately, after about a year or so, my van got stolen overnight. This is what it looked like. So they ended up finding the van about an hour and a half away from San Diego on the side of the freeway. So we get a call, we end up finding your van. I'm thinking, I'm down to zero because I just reinvested all my money. And I'm hoping that there's still some hope. I'm hoping that, when we actually go to the tow yard, we're going to find that there's still equipment I can keep going. Because remember, I come from nothing. I come from absolute scratch. So to rebuild it again is going to be a big effort. But when we found it, it was completely gutted. Even, the seats were all messed up. The seat belts were cut off. So I lost that business overnight. The next business that I got into is a drop shipping. So anybody my age, we can call it Gen Z/millennial, right? A lot of us know about drop shipping. Drop shipping became a big thing. So you would basically go to China, you would go to Alibaba or AliExpress, and you'd find these, 2-penny Chinese-made keychains, and then you'd sell them for a margin. But I ended up finding out a lot of people actually ended up getting success from drop shipping, but this was a store that I started called Apex Supplies. I had a business partner with this too. We're both the same age. This was when I was 19, 20. These were some of the ads that we had. I also was in the process of starting a YouTube channel called Clutch Racing. This top right is an example. This was taken in 2020 or 2019 or 2020, right around there. But we had always been working on organic marketing. And like I said, this is built from scratch. And this is an example of, when we first started, we were already getting some kind of results. Unfortunately, the business partnership fell through. I learned a lot of lessons with business partnerships throughout that time. But ended up having to move on to the next thing. This was probably, a year worth of my time or so when I was 19, 20. During this time, so by the way, remember I was telling you guys I was sleeping on the couch with this place my brother's renting, right? He ends up getting kicked out because I'm there. Now I have nowhere to go. I literally have nowhere to go. My brother ends up going with his friend. I have nowhere to go, and I luckily had a friend who allowed me to stay at his place for a little bit. So I almost homeless, one day away. Then I ended up reconnecting with my dad, and we shared this room here. This is the bedroom, the window to the bedroom, but we shared that room. I shared a master bed with my dad at 20 years old. So you can imagine, the actual feeling that you feel as a man, my first few years as a man, really as an adult, and it's still, trial and tribulation. I worked for a few jobs. I ended up working so I stopped doing Apex Supplies, and I started working for a few different jobs. I worked at Chevy as a salesperson, hated it, super scummy. I worked at Ford as a salesperson, hated it, super scummy. And then I ended up getting a valet job. So this is 4:45 in the morning. I was thugging it out. And then this is another picture. This is just references. But yeah, I was a valet there and definitely hated it. Always known that a regular job wasn't meant for me. And this was always just something that I was doing in the meantime until I had to figure out what the next move was. So what ended up happening was I was working as an oil tech and a tire changer. And I started flipping cars. So this top left car here is the first car that I ever flipped. So funny story is I had a friend who was flipping cars, and he was making good money. And I said, dude, his name was Eric. He's actually the guy that I partnered with Apex Supplies together with. But he was flipping cars, and I said, dude, if he can do it, I can do it. So I started looking up for cars, and I find this little piece of crap Volkswagen. And the guy, I think, wanted like $1,200 for it or something like that. So I'm living with my dad at the time. I tell him, my dad ends up taking me. I'm thinking, I don't know anything about, dude, I've never seen a pink slip. I don't know what the hell's about to happen. I just got paid, my W-2 just gave me $1,000. I'm like, I got the cash. Like, I don't even, I'm super nervous. And when we get there, I'm thinking that my dad, he's going to walk with me. He's going to walk the car. And I'm thinking I'm good. My dad's with me. We get to the spot, the address, and he just drops me off. Yeah, we get there, he turns his little hazards on, and I'm thinking like, what, aren't you going to park? The driveway's right here. He said, no, I'll be down the street. And at that point, I was already all in, so I said, all right, well, I guess I got to get off. So I got off, talked the guy down from like $1,200 to $1,000. I was like, all right, and I was just kind of following his lead. He ends up bringing out a pink slip, and I was just kind of like, do I sign this? I don't really know. Ended up getting the deal. Car was a little clapped out, but bought it. Flipped it, and I think I made like $200. So it's not about the price. The whole realization here is about the actual proof of concept. And that's a big business lesson in general, right? One of the first focuses when you get into any new venture is don't really focus on the money, right? The money will eventually come. But you have to learn the business principles that come with it. And in this instance, it's proof of concept. So I ended up flipping a bunch of different cars. This car here is actually the car that I was flipping when I ended up quitting my job. So I was making more money flipping cars than I was, in 2 weeks. I was making more money in 3 days flipping cars than I was in 2 weeks at my job full time. And I was flipping cars part time. So I ended up quitting, called the manager up and said, I'm not going to come back, and quit and went full time into flipping cars. This was April of 2020, and I haven't ever had a job since. Ever since then, it's been every money that's been made in my bank account has been solely from my own entrepreneurship ventures. This is a really cool car. This was a nitrous GT, automatic though. On the top left, this was me flipping a Gixxer 650. I was working on cams that were on a Civic. That was a really cool project. These are a bunch of cars that I flipped. So the really good thing about flipping cars is that it teaches you how to do marketing and sales. It totally folded over into wholesaling down the road, because you learn how to source deals, you learn how to negotiate, you learn how to look at the deal, find out what's wrong with it, negotiate with the guy, and then flip it. This was all I could fit on the actual page, but I actually flipped more cars than this. This was back in 2020. I used the money that I was making from flipping cars, and I actually put it into real estate education. I started getting really serious about my self-development. On the left is 2020. It's my vision board. I have my dealership here in the front, Lupercio Motorsports. and a bunch of different quotes. The right picture is a picture of me when I got my first property under contract. So crazy part is at this time, I had spent maybe $30,000 or so trying to learn how to actually get good at real estate, wholesaling real estate and things like that. And literally every coach was leading me the wrong way. I was learning a lot of philosophy, right? The main premise behind the wholesale coaching was you get a deal, you get it under contract, and then you sell it for a higher price. Which is okay, great, right? But how do I do that? Almost nobody would teach me. Finally, I ended up getting into another investing coaching program that ended up being a scam, paid another $10,000, and ended up wholesaling or getting a property under contract off the MLS in San Diego. Now, at this entire time, I was already super in debt. I was going through all these crazy trials and tribulations, and this was going to be my key to getting out. This would have been a $60,000 wholesale fee. And the coach that I actually got behind, I was just really his headhunter, now that I know, and he ended up backing out the last day of inspection contingency. So all the money I owed, 30 grand in debt, right? I thought I was finally going to make it. It all went away in a matter of one night. So I ended up saying, screw this. I ended up looking into this thing called virtual wholesaling. I figured, the issue that I don't have is definitely not effort. I can make as many calls as needed. Nobody was really talking about virtual wholesaling at the time. It ended up becoming a thing years later. But essentially, virtual wholesaling is when you acquire contracts in areas that aren't your backyard, different marketplaces. So I'm in San Diego, California, and I'm like, dude, you know what? I'm going to try and do this somewhere else. Now, what do I need to do how do I know that when I get a property under contract, it'll actually sell? Now, it's a simple principle of supply and demand. What I did was I studied where the migration patterns were, and ended up finding a place called Knoxville, Tennessee, which is crazy how I ended up here, right? Found Knoxville, Tennessee, started marketing here. This was the very first month of the KPIs that I did. So 12,000 calls, 800 contacts, 61 leads, 14 cash offers, and 6 contracts. This is me locking in a deal. This isn't some fun I was having. This was the very first day I ever started cold calling for virtual wholesaling. It ended up leading to a few deals, which was great. Keep in mind, like I said, I come from sleeping on couches and things like that, so this is a massive win. Finally. I ended up closing on one of the properties that I had under contract. This is me the day that I closed on the property on the top left. Closed on the property, packed my stuff from San Diego, and moved out to Knoxville, Tennessee, which is the top center picture. And I ended up living in a place called Beverly Hills in Knoxville. I joke because it's actually Lonsdale. I don't know if you guys know the area or not, but I consider it Iraq. Pretty crazy. I had pretty crazy, it's gone better since. This was back in 2021. But back then, man, it was still pretty ghetto. When I ended up selling this house, a guy ended up getting shot on the same street that I lived at and died. I had times where, I was going in my back alley, I always tell the story. I had a 16-year-old kid, he looked like he was 16, never confirmed his age. But he ended up pulling out a pistol on me when I was going into my backyard. Crazy. There was times where I'd leave, I'd go to a real estate event, I'd go speak somewhere. I went to Spokane, Washington, came back, and all my windows were up. Trash can right in front of the window. Somebody was in robbing nothing because I was sleeping on the floor, so they were a little disappointed. Yeah, maybe that. On the right here, the bottom, this was actually an upgrade. So I used to sleep on the floor here. There was a carpet before I took it out. Slept on the floor. This was like a cockroach-infested, rat-infested house. And for a year, I lived in it. Because, by the way, it's still an upgrade. Dude, it's better than sleeping on my friend's living room couch where people are walking in and out staring at me, right? Still an upgrade. This was my office. This was my premium desk. And that office was actually pretty crazy, too. This house had no central air. There was no HVAC. There was no nothing. So during winter, it got really cold. There'd be times where I'd wake up and you could see my breath. I would just have the blanket over me the entire time. Would hate to get up. So that was the real definition of cold calling. I'd go in here and I'd make calls. Yeah, pretty crazy. Another time too, I was in this room, I had seen rats running around. I had a cockroach in my drink. I didn't realize it until I drank it. That was nice. So pretty crazy. But once again though, the entire time I'm like, yeah, this sucks, but it's still a stepping stone. I knew the entire time that this isn't the end destination. This is simply only what I have to do to get to where I need to go. It's still much better than, my parents having no money. It's still much better than sleeping on couches. It's still better than sharing a bed with my dad. At least I have privacy. I guess not with cockroaches and mouses. Those are my roommates. But outside of that, it was still an upgrade. And that's a big thing through the times that you go through trials and tribulations. What's very vital and very important is that you actually have your mindset correctly. Everybody always talks about mindset. You buy into a coaching program, that's one of the first things they talk about. But it's actually really true. Your entire life experience derives from the meaning that you actually cultivate with it, that you tie to it. So I could have been here and said that this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me. I live in the ghetto, not Beverly Hills. I live in the ghetto of Knoxville, Tennessee. I had a 6-year-old pull a pistol on me. One time I was at the coffee shop. This drug dealer was trying to get into my house, and I seen on my eye ring. Crazy stuff. I could be woe is me, but once again, I realized the entire time it was simply just a stepping stone for me to get to where I was going. In this case, real estate development, right? Now, I ended up selling that property. I ended up making like 60 grand, so I bought it for $30,000. Ended up selling it the next year for 95. Really good deal. This was my second attempt of scaling wholesaling. So the primary thing around wholesaling is you're basically a sales and marketing company. It's really what you are. Now, this is our third attempt where Kville Estates was my attempt at that. I wanted to hire VAs. I didn't know shit about hiring nobody. And I was trying to figure out how to create SOP modules. How do I even find VAs? I hear all these guys, all these gurus talking about it. It must be simple. Didn't work. Failed at that. When I sold the house, I ended up using a lot of that money to start a company called America First Property Solutions. So this is essentially the same thing, a marketing and sales company for acquiring real estate, but rather in Knoxville, Tennessee, it was actually towards Dallas, Texas. Now, at this time, I had 3 VAs. I had a whole system. I hired my brother, who was 6 years older than me. He quit his barber job. I gave him a salary full-time and did that for a few months. But I was making no cash flow. We got no deals, so I ended up pulling the plug. And this was back in 2022, so the market was actually a lot more challenging then, too. So I'm learning all these different lessons, right? Just because you have more money to spend on marketing or more money to spend on the team, it doesn't mean you're going to get results. And in specific, I went from a blue ocean, a tiny little pond like Knoxville, Tennessee that only a few people were fishing in, to a massive red ocean where the competition are great white sharks, Dallas, Texas. Their marketing spend is like 100 grand, light work. But I'm over here thinking that 5 grand is a lot of money when it wasn't. So that was one of the big lessons I learned during that period of time is that you have to be dedicated to a particular market and mastering a market before you start to expand. Very, very important. This was a little bit more of the details of America First Property Solutions. This was a website I created. That was me taking a video for the website. This is me and my brother. Now, what ended up happening was, side by side, I ended up starting a podcast called the Road to Freedom Podcast, on the bottom left. Now, that didn't end up working out, so I changed it to the High Caliber Man. Had some, interesting, controversial topics. And, we got some good results. This was that thing, the left was the Facebook, 65,000 followers. I had multiple videos hit millions. One hit 7 million. YouTube, I was doing videos that hit 1 million. Instagram, I think I finally got a video that hit 1 million during this time. And this was the metrics on YouTube, 9 million. Now, one thing that I did learn amongst all this time, right, going through all these different ventures, is that all the same principles that make you successful apply to anything you do. A big part of it is tenacity. A big part of it is dedication and commitment. Those are some of the lessons I learned transitioning into this. I ran this for about a year, so I stopped real estate completely. My thought process was, I'm going to be the next guru. I literally was like, I'm about to make 100 grand a month selling courses. It was literally my thought process. 250 grand, I was already calculating it. 1% of my audience buys, I got to get this big. Did not work at all. Spent an entire year. I was making like 3 videos a day. When I finally released my first product, which is a whole story in itself, completely flopped. Nobody bought it. Like, nobody really even knew about it. I'd already felt super burnt out at that point and realized I just need to get back into real estate. My thought process was doing this was I'm going to create cash flow to get back into real estate. I need a cash cow. Ended up not working out. Once again, another just 1 year wasted. Not wasted, but another 1 year time dedicated. That's when I ended up getting back into real estate. And that's when America First Developments was founded. So one of the biggest lessons learned here throughout this entire time is you have to dedicate yourself to one thing. You have to be able to actually build a real company. Something that has real vision, something that actually has real impact, and something that's going to be long-lasting. Most people, 95% of people, do things like a hustle. Most people don't even know that they're doing that. What ends up happening is every single venture that you do, right? I had this massive epiphany one day. I was on a workout, and I realized that the reason why I hadn't achieved the success that I was looking to achieve yet was simply because of the shiny object syndrome. Literally, when something looked better, I would go and do the next thing. When you're going through your first venture or a different venture, you finally face a couple of challenges. And then once you face a challenge, oh my God, this other thing looks way better. Come to find out, no matter what you do, no matter what avenue you pursue, finances, real estate, being a franchise owner, whatever it might be, you will always face trials and tribulations. You will always face it. So the way that you ever actually overcome it and become successful in that thing is by dedicating yourself to one path. And the thought process is, I'm going to do this forever, however long it takes to actually become successful in that thing. It could be 1 year, it can be 5 years, it can be 15 years. At the end of the day, I don't really even care. Because either way, you're going to have to go through that path. On the top left here, this was actually the first month that we founded the company, right? So my business partner, Nate Lindquist, and I were on a Google Meet. I'm in Hawaii at the time, broke. He ends up bailing me out. I had like $8,000 of credit card debt, no money, struggling, trying to flip cars to make ends meet. Nate comes in, he pays for my credit cards. He says, I got you, bro. You did get me. And we started wholesaling, we started getting properties under contract. And then we said one day, you know what? Why don't we actually start a real company that means something? Why don't we start a real company that actually has longevity and a repeatable process, like a printing press? Rather than trying to wholesale and fix and flip, why don't we actually build a real company that can actually scale and get out of this rat wheel? And that was in January 2024. Keep in mind, I'm super broke, living in Hawaii, renting a room. I've only wholesaled. Nate's the one who's been doing contracting work. And right after that conversation, we find this plan here, take a picture of it, and I put this on my Instagram. Fast forward 1 year, those are the 2 houses that we ended up building in the process of Viewcrest. Now, with that came massive trials and tribulations, but it's just an example of what you can do when you set your mind to it. Here's a quote by Epictetus, really good guy, stoic dude. It says, circumstances don't make the man, they only reveal him to himself. It doesn't matter what you pursue in life. You're always going to face challenges, whether it's personal or in business. The real truth behind entrepreneurship is you have to build yourself into the man that can sustain anything that life throws his way. That's not hoorah. That ain't motivation. That's just simply the truth. It doesn't matter what you do and what you pursue. You will always face trials and tribulations. And the focus must be, how do I become stronger out of this? What is this lesson trying to teach me? What is God and the universe trying to show me here to improve myself? What are the blind spots that I have that's keeping me stuck here, having to relearn this lesson over and over and over again? All the challenges you face are real opportunities for you to become a better man. There's a quote that I really like a lot by this guy named Alex Ramosi. Probably most of you guys know Alex Ramosi here. But you stay in poverty until you learn the lessons that poverty has to teach you. So in entrepreneurship, and really in life, you will stay stuck at the levels of whatever you're stuck at until you learn the lessons that's going to allow you to level up. In this case, it's poverty, right? One of those lessons for me was the shiny object syndrome. Focus on one path. Don't get caught up in what everybody on Instagram is doing. Don't get caught up in trying to do the next best thing. Find a path that you can actually stick to and stick to it. This is a very important graph. Very, very important graph. If you study any successful entrepreneur, there's an actual learning curve and success curve to it. Robert Greene, the guy who wrote 48 Laws of Power, he has a book called, I think, 10,000 Hours to Mastery or something like that, or he has a book called Mastery. One of the things that he said is it takes 10,000 hours to master something. 5 to 10 years, basically. That's the same exact principle when it comes down to entrepreneurship and business. Now, you see this curve, this is the hockey stick curve, right? That's why you always hear the people say, I'm a 10-year overnight success. Most people don't see the first 10 years. Most aren't even willing to dedicate themselves to 2 years. Now, every single time, one of the lessons I learned, every single time you start a new venture, every single time you start something new because it got challenging, all you're doing is you're restarting your path. So you have to go through this entire line here to become successful. That's why you have to stick to one thing. Every time you do a new thing, high caliber man, fix and flip, flipping cars, all I'm doing is I'm just restarting. So whatever you do, whatever you pursue, you have to make sure it's something that you can dedicate yourself to long term and have an expectation that's going to be very challenging. And that's another key thing. Most people think, after watching Instagram and scrolling, doom scrolling for a couple minutes, that you can get a Lamborghini in 5 minutes. Mailbox money, bro. I start this venture and in 2 months, I'm a baller. I'm going to have a penthouse in Miami. That's what I thought. And unfortunately, I learned the hard way that's not how it works. This is the key question. What is your vision? This applies both to your personal life and in business. The only way that you're going to be able to make it through all the trials and tribulations, and let me tell you, there are massive trials and tribulations, are by having an actual vision to what you're doing. I can tell you mine. Mine is to become successful, to bring my family into prosperity. Mine is, I don't want my children to ever have to deal with bills. I don't want my children to ever have to walk in and there's no water. I don't want to ever have my kids have to sleep on the floor. I want my kids to prosper, and they are going to. So every time I don't do the thing that's required of me, I'm letting them down. Not an option. What's your vision? Our company vision is a long-term, 25-plus year, really to the day that we die, vision. Everybody sees, yes, we're developing houses in Knoxville, Tennessee, but really what we're building is a manufacturing real estate development company, an innovative one. What's your vision? Last thing I'll leave you guys off with here is stay true to one path, just like I was telling you guys about. Stay true to one path. Don't hopscotch and skip jump to all kinds of different things. I'm an agent now. I'm a sub-2 guy now. I'm a short rental guy now. Every time you see me, it's something new. That guy will fail 100%, guaranteed. The guy who actually gets real success, multi-millionaire, is the guy when you talk to him in 5 years, he's doing the same thing, but he's just much more propelled, much further ahead. Burn the boats. Give yourself no other option. Now, This isn't a piece of advice for anybody who wants to dip their toe in, 1 foot in, 1 foot out. You don't become successful that way. The way you achieve success is by burning the boats, giving yourself zero other options. It's either success or death, quite literally. And when I say that, I absolutely mean it. It's either I figure it out or I die. The only thing that's ever going to stop me from becoming successful for myself and my family and for our company is literally death. That's it. That's how committed I am. And that type of mindset, that type of truth is how you get through the hard stuff, which will come. Last thing I'll say is we're hiring. America First Development is hiring. We're looking for salespeople. So if you know about anybody, be sure to send them our way. I appreciate you guys for listening. I had a good time speaking with you guys. If you guys have any questions, can be about anything, developments, anything, just let me know. Thank you guys.
What was that moment where you figured out what that object you wanted to stick on was? Like, how did you decide on developing and realize that was really what the one was for you, and not something that was just going to be a passive thing like some of your other ventures?
Yeah. Well, I had already gone through all these different ventures, so one of the things that I really wanted to focus on was finding something that had a long runway. Now, with real estate developments, the difference between developments and anything else is that when it comes down to wholesaling and it comes down to fix and flips, it's a hustle. That's really all it is. People can scale a fix and flip company. People can scale a wholesale company. I don't know. I've been doing this since 2020. I don't know anybody who's still around who scales a wholesale company. I've never heard of that. When do you ever hear a level of Elon Musk or Steve Jobs that has a wholesale real estate company? Never hear that. So the thought process is, what can I do? What avenues can I look within real estate that actually have high leverage and high scalability? And with that in specific is predictability, right? In order to scale predictably and sustainably, we have to have a repeatable process. With fix and flip and wholesaling, there's no scalability, right? There's no predictability, I should say. Who knows? It's going to be John one day, Henry's going to give us our next deal, Billy, Perlo the next deal, we don't know. With real estate development, we can buy big pieces of land, entitle that land to where we can turn it from one big plot to 50 different lots. Now we have 50 opportunities to build houses. And within those houses, we know that, hey, we know our cost of materials and labor. It's going to cost us 60 cents, and we can sell it for $1. No problem. We could even sell it for 80 cents if we have to. Fast in the market and still make 20 cents. And now we have 50 of them. And by the way, that's only one piece of land. There's literally hundreds of thousands of other pieces of land that we can do this with. Now, the only thing I can say with developments is there's a reason why when you look at developments, all the guys who are actually very successful in real estate developments, I'm not talking about Jimmy from Instagram. I'm talking about literally legacy developers, D.R. Horton and things like that. There's a reason why it takes a very long arc in developments to become successful. Because with developments comes a lot of trial and tribulation and a lot of things to learn, a lot of things. But the premise is getting through those trial and tribulations, you become one of the legacy developers. But that was the turning point. We got so tired of running the rat wheel. The conversation that Nate and I had was, dude, I'm over this rat wheel. We literally just go after new deals every day. When we stop working, nothing happens. We don't know where the next deal is going to come from. Let's start a real company that we can scale. And that's when developments came in. And the crazy part about developments is there's so many different ways to have an exit strategy, right? We can get one big piece of land, let's just say it's 20 acres, right? We could turn that into 75 lots. We could turn it into 20 big parcels. We could just cut it in half, sell it, sell two of them. We can do horizontal development, entitle it horizontal development, which is putting streets, sewer, utilities, sell the individual lots. We can keep the lots and build on them. We have the ability to control that neighborhood on what we want to build, which is very, very important for us, part of our branding. But you can see that's a lot different conversation than how do I hire a VA so I can get a wholesale deal and just, get 10 grand off of, whoever off the street. So that was kind of the turning point for that. So since starting the company, we've done a total of, I think we've completed 6. So we've done Stevenson, we've done Candora, Seminole, Cecil. Did I say Candora already? Viewcrest 1, Viewcrest 2, Island Home. So like 7 or 8, something like that. Yeah. Now, we've also gone to, realistically, it needs to be more. It needs to be like 15 to 20. A big part of the reason why we haven't done more as of yet is because we're learning a lot about cash flow and also learning a lot more about systems. Which once again goes back to the lesson of in developments, there's a lot of lessons that you have to learn. A lot of lessons that you have to learn. A lot of risk you take. Massive risk. But yeah, to answer your question, about 7 or 8, something around there.
You had mentioned earlier about being a salesman in elementary school. Now, where were you sourcing your candy from?
Candy was sourced from a local, like a bulk Costco type deal. Yep.
I wonder, are any of those lessons still tried and true in some of the things that you do today? Are there any Costco's, so to speak, where you know you're going to get a quality product over and over, regardless of how much you buy, so it's worth paying for?
Yeah, for sure, most definitely. That's a really cool part too, to your point about entrepreneurship, is that even through different ventures, you actually learn the core principles of entrepreneurship. In this case, buy low, sell high. Source deals, source opportunities, in this case, buy in bulk, and sell them individually for a higher price. That's the exact same thing with developments, right? I mean, really this kind of plays more into the land development part. You know, when you buy a big piece of lot, a big lot, and you split it and entitle into 15, 25, whatever it might be, it's the same exact principle, 100%. Same thing with wholesaling. Acquisitions is really a marketing and sales company, and you learn how to source these deals off market for a cheap price, 40 cents on the dollar, and you sell it to, you know, another guy for 80 cents on the dollar, and you make that spread. It's the exact same thing, exact same thing.
I have a question for you. And if you don't mind me asking, what's like the difference in price per square foot on a home like this versus like, let's say, probably 800 square foot home?
Yeah.
That probably wasn't as near as nice as this.
Is your question more around quality or size? Or both?
Yeah, probably more quality.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, our build price is probably like $220 a square, right around there, which is fat, huge. Now we're in the process of actually dialing that in. A lot of that comes from labor and construction management, for sure. It's bloated, most definitely. But I can tell you there's competition who's building houses for $140 a square, which is insane. But I can tell you these guys are using Tyvek. They're using the lowest quality material, the most illegal. Dude doesn't even speak English. Dude can really say, hey, the most illegal type of labor. We don't do that. You know, we prioritize high quality. And that's why we're not meant for everybody. Not everybody's meant for a Ferrari. But yeah, I mean, it's going to take us a little bit more time to scale. But yeah, I mean, we build for like we're selling for our grandma. We're selling a house to our grandma. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely a big difference between quality. You know, the market typically ranges on a cheaper end, like 140, 120, we've even heard. Higher end gets to like 180 to 220 a square, at least in this market. I've heard Texas and other markets are like way cheaper. Could definitely be that too. But that's our experience so far from this market, and we're on the process of dialing that in a lot more.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
How much are you willing to pay per lot for each dwelling? So in this example, you have 2 dwellings, but when you break it up per house, how much are you trying to pay for a lot?
I mean, obviously, as it goes with anything, right, the lowest amount possible. What I can say real quick about that too is one thing that you end up seeing in the spreadsheets is that the lower that you can acquire the lot for, the more back-end equity that you have. So like our thought process was, yeah, it costs us more to build, but we can actually create leverage for ourselves in the marketplace by selling for the same price. It's still costing the same, but the way we recuperate that cost is by having really low acquisition costs. I mean, there's times where we're paying like $5,000 for a lot, and we're building houses like this. And that's the really good thing about actually doing direct-to-seller marketing, is it allows you, assuming you have a good salesperson, you have good negotiation skills, good marketing skills, it allows you to like literally acquire deals pennies on the dollar. Now, as we scale, D.R. Horton doesn't go and D.R. Horton buys. We always go to a bunch of city council meetings and stuff like that. D.R. Horton's buying like already entitled properties, big old lots, 55, 150, 400 lots for like millions and millions and millions of dollars. So as the company scales, I think we're going to be less prone to making sure that that's super low. But that's one of the key things that allows us leverage within this marketplace, and anywhere that we go is the ability to acquire as low as possible. But yeah, at the end of the day, like the typical development / builder price to acquire, the max allowable offer is 15% of MSRP or after repair value or after build value. So if we're going to sell a house for $100,000, we don't want to spend any more, assuming there's utilities and everything's already ready to go. Raw land's different. But an infill lot ready to go, we don't want to spend any more than $15,000. But when it comes down to with developments and building, you run the numbers before. You have an ideal exit price. You go conservative. We always do everything conservative, very conservative. And you can actually adjust. We're going to make 20% margin, 25% margin. If we adjust the acquisition price of the lot here, it lowers it or increases it. But yeah, as low as possible, but nothing more than 15%.
What would you say is one of the most recent or current lessons that you've learned in either entrepreneurship or building houses?
So I come from, good question by the way. I come from, thank you, man. Yeah. Obviously I come from a very no money background. So one of the ways that I survived was essentially doing everything on my own. It's just like this ingrained secondhand nature, right? I don't have anybody to pay. I have 3 pennies in my account. So who's going to do the work? It's going to be me. So a big recent lesson that I'm still in the process of getting out of is not being the person who has to do everything. Now, still be in control and still making sure that things are done correctly, but kind of relinquishing control in the sense of not being the only person who actually does the work and hiring it out. Delegation, that's something that you're really good at. You're very good at delegation. That's something that I'm still in the process of learning how to do and realistically holds the company back. And I would say that's the other big thing about entrepreneurship, running a company is you have to be consciously aware of the mistakes that you make, where they come from, resolving them, and improving. But that's for sure the most recent one.
About financing, I'm sure you get this question a lot, but without any specifics or anything, gurus on Instagram talking about 5% down,
Yeah.
you can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
What kind of financing, how do you all usually structure these?
We have private money that we have access to, and we also use hard money lenders. We've done banks too. Nate is the one who deals, he's the CFO of our company, so he deals a lot more with the financing. But it's pretty simple. What would you say?
Yeah, there's a combination of what questions do you have around financing? I know you're
Are you looking for like the terms that we typically work with?
Yeah, we're using the land as collateral, so it's pretty minor, even with the hard money lenders. Origination points, 1.5. Obviously, experience plays into that. We're grateful that we can actually produce a real estate track record for fix and flip and new construction. But yeah, we are using the private money to be able to leverage that in acquisitions for our land. Because, a lot of times we can't wait around on the lender.
I think we pay like a couple points, right? Like 1.5 sometimes to get into the loan.
Yeah,
That's typically about it.
Alone, there's some bull crap, like attorney, legal docs that are like $1,500 in Tennessee. I don't think there's any way around that. Obviously, if you go to a traditional bank, appraisals are going to be cheaper. They got to go through some software, and it's like $700, $800. But there's less red tape. They're looking at really your track record, and they run credit score and things like that. And then
Yeah.
where banks, they may tell you, yeah, we can close in 30 days, and you're still talking to them at 45. Like, what's going on, man? Where's the credit team at? So like we
Pull the rug.
can't run a business and scale based on unpredictable
Metrics.
deadlines with
Yeah.
money. So definitely willing to pay more just to have reliability and actually somebody that's committed to a date and a deadline.
Does that answer your question? Okay.
When do you think that you're gonna be able to eliminate the banks and banking? You have a predictable date on when you won't need banking, where you just buy land, sell it, and move it. You're not be your own lender.
I don't think that we'll, I don't really think that's our intention. I think we're always going to be using bank money for sure. For sure, yeah, most definitely. I mean, there's definitely, the only issue that, and this is probably something that I still need to learn, but the only issue that I have when it comes down to borrowing money is it just depends. I just don't like any limitations. I hate limitations. I'm definitely like a free and clear kind of guy. I'm like, cash, bro. We don't want to finance nothing. In my personal life, like everything's cash. But I know to scale the company to where it needs to go, given the economy, given, who knows, we're going to be in Chernobyl in 5 years, who knows. I'm like, we got to do what we have to do to scale. And I think part of that is continuously using bank money, private money, basically other people's money. I don't think it's ever going to go away, throughout the entire company's life.
Personal question for you. Do you believe you've reached your 10,000 hours?
No, definitely not. Definitely not. Yeah.
And if you're looking to scale your company, I'm not afraid of business.
Okay, all right. I'm always looking to learn. Any other questions? Want me to sit?
Yeah, something we just talked about is being a partner.
Yeah. When we talk about partnership, what we're talking about is big partnership. So our thought process is, one of the things that we realized, development takes a lot more money than we expect, right? We have $2 million, $1 million, or whatever, bank money, private money, and we end up realizing that doesn't really take us that far. We're thinking we can build neighborhoods out. Like literally, I can build probably 15 houses with that, you'd think. But we've ran into cash flow issues to where we've been revealed that we can do a lot less than that. One of the things that we realized is we'd be open to partnering with somebody who's a developer or somebody who's more experienced than us in those channels, has $15 million, he's a money partner in that sense, or even somebody who's much further ahead in like land development, land entitlement, and things like that. That's kind of what we mean when it comes down to who we're willing to partner with. And the thing is, even if it's the most ideal partnership, a big thing for us is making sure we're principally aligned. So that's also what we mean by that as well. That answers your question. I hope so. Yeah, that's another big thing that we've learned. I would say vetting subs is probably not really a problem for us because I can be very specific about how I vet people, we vet people. Really how it comes down to is it's just like anything else, right? Like ideally you get the most amount of leads, post on Facebook, ask around. Nate's really good at finding potential subs, and he typically does that through referring, or asking for referrals from other subcontractors, and in specific the ones that we actually like to work with. But when we get a subcontractor in front of us, it's just like anybody else for a job interview. I'm asking them, who are you? How long have you been in the business? This is who we are. These are what we do. We don't handle it. It's all about excellency. I don't care about this. We're not. Well, there's a term in Spanish called a la chingada, right? I always say this. Nate's probably gonna laugh at that, which is basically like, let's just who cares? Let's just get out of here. A la chingada. And I always tell the guys, no a la chingada. I don't want that. We're very, very specific about what we want to build. So just being very, very specific and stern when it comes down to what we expect quality-wise. And then when it comes down to management, that's a whole different thing, right? One of the things that we've learned is that time is money, of course, common business principle. So when you're really unorganized, it actually immensely will extend your days to build. Every single day that you're building that's not complete is one less day on the market, which means that buyer is going to go and find another property that could have been yours. We're learning to actually get like construction softwares and stuff like that in place, building schedules and things like that, but we're still in the process of actually resolving that. That answers your question. I hope it does.
Yeah. Another thing is once you do hire someone, just make sure you maintain the boundaries. Cause
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like for the guy that's, anyways, fly by night.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, going to Gray Hodges, meet with plumbers, spend a couple hours. Um, you know, the same with the electrical shops around town. That's how we found our electrician. And then obviously there's a step process. So I mean, there is a qualification process. I highly recommend making the time to go and actually see other job sites
Yeah.
that they're actually actively working on
Mhm.
and see how their guys are reacting at the job site. Because what we found is, one, we want to hire people that manage their guys. We don't want to be the ones
Yeah.
managing your people. We have our own stuff to manage.
Yep.
And that's something that will definitely hold you back in scaling, or even doing one house or whatever business you're in. But yeah, definitely making sure that even though you like the boss, like let's see
Yeah.
what his qualification process or her qualification process is for these people, because you definitely don't want to hire somebody, be committed to them, and now you're missing schedule timelines and things like that. So,
Yeah, that's much better said than me. I don't know if you want to say anything else on that.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, like with that too, is it goes back to being stern, right? Like, every time that we've hired a subcontractor and something went wrong, I take a mental note, and now I know the next time I have a contractor, whoever it is in any echelon, I'm gonna say, hey, dude, don't do this. We've had a time where this happened. I don't want that to happen. Is that gonna be a problem with you? No. And then if it ends up being a problem, I say, hey, remember that conversation that we had last week, where I said X, Y, and Z? Yeah, it's a problem now. Are you going to fix it, or is it going to continue to be a problem? Because if it's going to be a problem, we're not going to work together. And I would also say with that, to add to that, Nate was much better spoken than I was on that, is reputation, for sure. So like basically building like a name for yourself as a general contractor, where people, the subcontractors know about you. One thing that I've learned is that the way that subcontractors look at jobs is they look at it as working for a general contractor. And just like anything in business, the better branding that you can have, the more awareness of people have of you, the more opportunity you get. In this case, acquiring subs and stuff like that. But yeah, the biggest thing for sure is keeping them on schedule and keeping quality high is definitely being stern and setting expectations. Yeah. And Nate said being aware of patterns. And also not being afraid to call it out. I mean, one thing is you're working with a bunch of blue collar guys, right? You know this. So it's a bunch of, nicotine chewing, cigarette smoking, raspy voice, So you gotta tug them around sometimes to really make sure that they get what you're saying. And there's a big principle that says you give them an inch, they take a mile. That's absolutely how it works with subcontractors. But I always say it's a two-way street, right? Like, I'm not saying all these things and it just goes one way. If you have feedback, we'll take your feedback. When it comes down to paying you and we say we're going to pay you on a particular day, we pay you on that day. We're very easy. We always say this. We're either the easiest people to work with or the hardest. And the only reason why you're the hardest is because you're not doing your job correctly or you're being some kind of problem. Otherwise, we're always a man of our word. So it goes both ways too. And that's what we always communicate to that. So I guess the underlying principle would be communication.
So I know you guys said that you think having crews that you would have to manage would hold you back from scaling. You ever think about like having your own crews and just bringing somebody on as project management, or do you just want to stay away from that completely? And if so, just why?
Yeah. Yeah, so are you saying as far as like having a PM or a project manager for the project who manages the subs for us, or are you saying starting our own subcontracting businesses?
I'm saying more so having your own crews.
Yeah.
And just having like a guy on your team.
Yeah.
That he's just project manager, so the two of y'all don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
And at the same time, you don't have to deal with like the middleman with all of your subcontractors.
For sure. Yeah, I totally get your question. And it's kind of two different things, right? Those are two kind of different avenues. And I'm glad you asked that because this is really a golden nugget that took us a lot of time and money to learn. But I 100% hiring a project manager, 100%. We're still in the incubation stages of our company to where we're focused on making profit that we can turn back into leverage and pour back into the company so we can hire people out. You know, a PM is probably going to be probably going to cost us 80 grand to 120 grand. So just being in a position first as a company to do that, but that's our biggest next focus is actually hiring more people out to do things like that. Now, when it comes down to in-house stuff, like subcontracting, doing the work ourselves, having our own crew, we actually started to go down that path. People who see me on Instagram and stuff like that, we've done our own foundation. You know, we're both in the excavator or the excavator and the skid steer doing our own foundation work, right? Own footers and stuff like that. And you know, we end up kind of come to find out, dude, all you really do, it just depends, right? There's different strokes for different folks, right? For us and where we're going as a company, all it would really do is it would create a lot of drag on scaling, because we had to hire, we had to create all the SOPs, we had to create all the processes for one particular subgroup, and then also when there's no work for them to do, they're now a liability on the spreadsheet. They're not producing the company any revenue because, you know, the company is now focused on land acquisition or whatever it might be. And how do you scale a nationwide company, you know, where you're going to do 5,000 units, 10,000 units, 20,000 units a year, but you're focused on scaling these small, you know, HVAC crews, plumbing crews, and things like that. So that's what I mean. It depends on what level you want to actually achieve. I think for somebody who's just like a builder, you know, probably can make it work. Who's like, you know, just wants to stick around Knoxville, doesn't really plan on going anywhere past that. But you would think, right, we can save money. All we have to do is pay a guy $25 an hour. But we end up learning that it just creates a lot more drag. And we would rather focus scaling in different areas of the company rather than doing that. Any other questions? Going once, going twice. Yeah.
So you are obviously a very learned man. You mentioned a number of books and podcasts and things. Number one book recommendation for somebody just getting started in investing?
In investing? Do you want it to be investing specific?
Could be any number one book recommendation for somebody getting started in entrepreneurship.
I would say, like, one of the things that I've learned about entrepreneurship is that money is just a byproduct of who you are, right? So it's a really good question. Money is just simply a byproduct of your own actual thinking. So the focus can't be, how do I make more money? The focus is, how do I build myself into the best version of myself that can earn the most money? And organically, when you do that, you start to make more money. There's a really good book that changed my life called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark Manson. Yeah. I didn't make the title. Really good book, changed my life. I would absolutely recommend that book to anybody. It's changed every single time I've given that book to somebody, I've literally seen their life like, I'm talking about 180, like it's magic. Like legitimately. Yeah. By Mark Manson, yeah. There's a second book I would highly recommend called You Are a Badass by Jen Sincero. Super good book. Super good book. That book was a book that changed literally my life. I remember I was working that job as an oil tech and an oil tech and tire changer, right? And I'm like, want to be an entrepreneur my entire life. And I'm like, dude, I've already failed at multiple ventures. This is me at 19, 20, thinking that the world's ending. And I thought, you know, what's going on? Like, I'm supposed to be successful. You know, the 5-year-old on Instagram already has a Lamborghini, and I don't. And I'm actually trying my hardest. Like, is this just not meant for me? Well, that's not the case. It's all a lie. But I was reading on my lunch break, I was reading You're a Badass by Jen Sincero. And in the book, it talks about one specific quote that it says in the book is, anything I want and desire is accessible to me now. So any life that I want, any relationship, any business, any lifestyle is accessible to me now. We just have to build a path to get there. But really good book. You Are a Badass and The Subtle Art Not Giving a F by Mark Manson. And then I would say Think and Grow Rich. I mean, there's a bunch of different books, but those are the top two for sure. Yeah, and I would say to add to that too, like a couple things. Like there's a very good saying that I love called, and this applies personally too, but how you do one thing is how you do everything. So if you're telling this guy, dude, no alcohol on the job site, I don't want to see you drunk, I don't want to see you, none of this and that, they're hiding things, dude, what are you doing to your work? And then especially if you want to scale and you don't want to be babysitting them all day and you're not around, they're probably going to be doing the things that they shouldn't be doing, which is not good for your company. Another thing I'd say too for like management principle goes is at the end of the day, if a subcontractor messes up for the company, it's a reflection of you and your management. Taking full responsibility for it. So if somebody screws up, it's my fault. I didn't set expectations correctly. I didn't filter this guy correctly. I didn't have a conversation. I didn't set expectations with this guy on how to do the job, whatever it might be. It's solely on you. And the one thing too I can say about that is part of developing a really good like construction team that we found is you have to go through, just like it is with any other employee, you have to go through a bunch of crews to eventually find ones that you can actually rely on. And the thing is, especially as you scale and you want to find trades who are reliable that you don't have to always manage. They're self-managing. But what does that typically come with? I can spend 5 pennies for the most illegal labor, but it's going to require a lot of management. Or I can pay a little bit more money, for guys who are willing to self-manage, have a higher quality, but now I can go and focus on building the company in other areas, So that's another thing. That's another big mess up that a lot of people run into is you think cheap labor is actually better for the company, it ends up biting you in the butt. You end up so focused on one project, fixing all these problems, hovering over the shoulder of all these trades, when you shouldn't be having to do that. They end up messing up, now you have a 20 grand problem that now you have to fix. You could have spent that 20 grand on finding a reliable trade. Especially as you scale, all you do is when you have crappy people and crappy systems, all you do is you scale crap. So you have to have good systems and you have to find good people, good quality people, which takes time, and then you can scale that. But yeah, management is a reflection of you. So if your trades mess up, that's something that you did wrong.
Any other questions? The subtle art of not giving a
F by Mark Manson.
F.
It's an orange book. The subtle art. There you go. I don't know if there's kids in the room or not.
My kids, they've heard that
Trillion times.
today. What else we got? Anybody? Going once? Going twice? Austin Lupercio. Ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, everyone. Gracias. Shit. Thanks, bro. Light work. Some light. Thank you. Gracias. Shit.